Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer. Let's talk about Regulation A. Let's talk about escrow, right? These are what we call in the business comfort words. Actually, as a salesman, we call them Vaseline words because you can shove it all the way in there and it doesn't hurt as much, right? Because you feel comfort. Regulation A. We are under Regulation A. Guys, I'm going to break it down for you. This is, what I do. Sometimes for a living, sometimes for fun. And I'll break it down for you. I love it when the worlds of video games and business meet because this is where I live. I had a ChatGPT here give you a nice little chart, right? So you see how the money flows, and we'll talk about it. I'll break it down for you. Don't worry. Right? First, I have to start by saying this is not financial or legal advice of any kind, right? If you want to invest in Atari hotels, motels, watch my little short video, Atari motel. That might be a better investment, let me tell you. In my point of view, let me get back to the disclaimer. It's not financial or legal advice of any kind. Listen, if you need financial advice, you go consult a professional that has your best interest at heart. Don't be listening to YouTubers or anybody tell you about investments online and all that stuff. They have your best interest at heart. And I don't know what your financial situation is. I don't know if you have 2 cents at the bank or you have millions of dollars and you want to burn money. Whatever floats your boat, right? Now, with that said, let's get into some breakdowns here. Let me tell you, I hold a degree in business, specifically analysis. So I'm going to try to make this layman's terms, right? Try to break it down for you what this means. And I was watching Mike's Gaming Gala channel on the live stream that they did with the gentleman from, this Atari investment opportunity. It's not Atari, right? It's not Atari at all. You're not buying Atari stocks. This is a second part to a video that I made earlier regarding this particular investment opportunity. And look, I'm wearing the Tommy Tallarico hat in honor of the great one. Now, this gentleman they had on there, he is no Tommy Tallarico, let me tell you. He does not have the gift of gab like Tommy. However, he does, he said he was a CPA, right? And that's really important. Right? That's really important because a lot of times in these investments pitches, when they go to the public, so often the CPAs and others in that realm that go out there and I'll explain to you why they're the ones who sometimes are the loudest voices on these projects, right? And you can remember any investment opportunities like Amico and others, right, where a lot of the accountants were always front and center and trying to sell the project. Regardless, guys, let's talk about it here. Now, let's talk about what Regulation A is and isn't, and I'll break it down for you in layman's terms. Right? What is Regulation A in plain English? Regulation A is a fundraising rule, right? It's overseen by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, right? And it allows companies to raise money from the general public without actually going public, like without selling shares in the stock market or what have you. It's important to understand that Regulation A is about disclosure. It's not about safety. A lot of people say, well, it's about safety because it has information. Okay, you want to say that, that's fine. But when people hear the word safety, they think, well, your investment is safer. No, it's absolutely quite the opposite. This is about disclosure. Right? It's not about the safety of your investment. It forces companies to file an offering circular, to disclose risks, to publish financial information, and fourth, to tell you that you could lose everything. Right? So there's not much safety in losing everything, is there? Right? What it doesn't guarantee, right? It doesn't guarantee success, profits, or refunds. It doesn't do any of that. It doesn't mean that the SEC approves of this, or the business, that the project will be completed. It doesn't guarantee that either. It doesn't guarantee that your money is protected, and doesn't uh, guarantee that uh, that investors come first, right? It doesn't do any of those things. That's why we call them comfort words, right? Because when you hear Regulation A and Escrow, remember the Escrow of the Amico, right? That makes it easier to slip it in, if you will. That investment pitch goes in a lot smoother. And that doesn't mean that they're lying, right? They can't control how you interpret those words, right? That's why you have to stay informed. You have to know. But as a salesperson, right? If you're pitching these out there, these are part of the words that you use in your repertoire, if you will, in order to convince people. So let's talk about Regulation A and what it protects and what it doesn't protect. Okay. So Section A is or Reg A. A lot of people call it. It sounds like reggae, like the music, but no, it's Reg A. Is a filing where companies lay out the basics, right? Who's raising the money, how much they want to raise, and how they may use the funds. May, okay, may. That's a permissive word. May or may not. Here's what the section does to protect you from being kept in the dark, right? That's the main goal of the regulation, for you to have as much information as possible before you make an investment. It's try to keep you safe from hidden tricks, from surprise changes after the fact. It puts everything in writing, right, which is really convenient for the investor. If you try to read, the problem is people don't read, right? Now, here's what the section does not protect you from: losing money. Anybody can lose money in investment. Management, changing plans. Management is a core driver of these whole projects, because they really have the say, right, of where your money goes. Sometimes they could have plenty of money left over and decide not to distribute it. It's just that simple. You read these contracts and it's on them, right? You could think, okay, well, we already sold all this. They're going to give us money back, right? Not necessarily. Right? Not necessarily. You really have to read the paperwork. The management can say, no, we're going to keep this. We're going to buy back some stock. We're going to pay this. We're going to pay that. They don't have to do anything. It's not in the contract, right? It doesn't protect you from delays, from the project failing. Doesn't protect you of that. Or in this case, let's say the hotel's never built it. It doesn't protect you from that. Okay. Section A, what it protects you from, it protects your right to be informed, right? If you really want to break it down in a nutshell. It does not protect your bank account, right? Which is how it may seem when it's being presented to you. Oh, we have extra protections. We got extra protections. We got protection. This is better than condoms. Yeah, you got Reg A, baby. Yeah, that's how I sound when I put on the suit. The salesman on AI is really just a caricature of what we do sometimes, right? Now, let's talk about escrow, right? Those of you who invested in the Amico and other such projects, you already know that escrow doesn't mean jack squat, right? The escrow claim. Let's break it down clearly here. Some promoters have said, right, in general projects, not just this one, or I don't know if they did in this one or not. If the project doesn't hit its goal, the money is held in escrow and is returned, right? Famously, like Tallarico and his buddies said. That sounds great, right? Sounds amazing. But under Regulation A, that only happens if the paperwork forces it. So you really have to read your contract. So it needs to have a hard minimum raise amount, right? A deadline. As we know, a lot of these projects don't have deadlines because there could be delays, yada, yada, yada. They give themselves a lot of leeway. And there has to be language that says that the funds are going to be returned if the minimum is not met. Right? Like you need those things. They need to be laid out. If those things are not locked in together, refunds are not automatic. It could be at the discretion of the manager, for example. Now, in this filing, at least how I read it, it allows for rolling closings in sections, partial raises, the use of funds before the full target is reached. So I think they want to raise 40 million, but I think they could start drawing at 8 million or something like that, right? So if they only raise 10, they can use the 10. They don't have to get the whole amount of money. Now, it's very important, and what these people never talk to you about whenever they're throwing these pitches out there. And listen, I have to give props to Mike. At least I heard him be skeptical and bring some things out that I brought out before that he probably knows from, him engaging in whatever business he works in. But I'm glad that they actually, threw those elements out there, right? So I don't think he was prepared for as much pushback as he got with the AI presentation and the fact that there's been other projects that have promised these things. Because at the end of the day, this guy wants to get to the same thing. He wants crowdfunding, right? And they want to do it through these vehicles. And the way it's presented, because that's your job, right, is to raise funds and present it in the best way possible. So they make all these promises. Oh, we're going to have, what do you say? We're going to have, if you want an NES delivered to your room so you can play NES, or you can go get it, bring it to your room, whatever. That's nuts. If any business that would do that, unless you're doing it yourself, unless you're having your own trade personnel bringing the unit up and they're installing it, they're bringing everything and they're hooking it up to the TV, that's great. You don't want that for reliability purposes. You don't want people trying to connect it to, okay, this is for a CRT, so all the rooms are going to have CRT TVs. That's nuts. Because most people are just going to use it as a hotel. They don't want an old TV on there, unless it's going to be like every room is going to have wood paneling. That's going to be your, that's going to be the sale point, right? It's just like the 1980s, whatever. So they can say a lot of things before. They can make all kinds of promises. Doesn't make it reality, right? So let's look at the flow chart. Let's talk about, how the money flows. So usually at the top, and this is why you get these kind of people first, are lawyers, accountants, platform fees, whatever they are, offering and marketing costs, right? That's why they always say, we're going to use this for marketing. Marketing. What does that mean? It could be anything, right? It could be Tommy Tallarico going on YouTube shows, and every time he goes, he pays himself $1,000. It could be anything. It could be anything. It could be any of the people showing up and saying, okay, well, I clocked in for work. I had to prepare for this live stream. It took me a couple of days. And then, you can play with the numbers. And that's happening before construction, right? The next layer, after those people get paid off, and this is why accountants are always at the top, trying to put accountants and marketers are always, the ones making the loudest noises, because they're part of the people that get paid first. Also, before construction happens, which is the next layer, reimbursements happen, right? From insiders, whoever, lent the company money, right? Famously, right? Again, many companies pay themselves first. Whether it's Amico, anybody else, that's what happened in that case. They decided to pay themselves first. There was nothing left afterward. You repay advances, anybody that fronted money for whatever reason. And then management and operating expenses. Now, a lot of these times, guys, a lot of companies, I'm not saying that this is the case, but in a lot of companies, there's no operating expenses. These people work regular jobs. They work somewhere else. They don't have anything. It's usually somebody's house. Like, you'll see somebody's house is actually the headquarters of the company, right? But they'll include operating expenses and say, okay, well, I spent this, that, and the other. Whatever. How it doesn't mean it's illegal. Right? I'm not saying it's illegal. I'm just saying when they do these things, they're always, for the most part, overcompensated. Well, wait a minute. You're already paying for your house. If you want to say, okay, I used this room for business, I want to take, part of what I spend in this room or whatever, that'd be something else. But however, guys, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Okay. And then the next layer after that, if the hotel is built, the bank gets paid first. Number one is the bank. Construction lenders are always seniors in the payment process, right? Then after that, management may hold cash for reserves for operating after that, right? And only at the very bottom, and I mean the very bottom, is you, the idiot with $500. You're the co-owner. Oh, let's toast to that. Now, guys, if anything above this stack that I just laid for you fails, it runs out of money, or it never materializes, there may be nothing left at the bottom, right? So the way when you hear the pitch, it sounds like you're up here, but in reality, you're down here. You're always down here. If you were up here, they would never do it. There'd be no point, right? If they have to pay you first, what's the point of having you buy in? Now, you just have to use common sense. A lot of people that do these deals, right? If you look at this, they say, "Oh, we have these projects made." Apparently, but what I heard yesterday, this is the largest project they've ever made. So you've never done this at this scale. So there's no proof that you can actually do it. On top of that, you're trying to raise funds from the public. When you've had all these successful projects, and you guys can dig into, I don't have the time right now, but you can look into those projects and see what success means. Usually when you're very successful and you deliver high rates of return, your customers, your investors, are banging down the door to invest in you, right? Because instead of putting it in the bank and getting at most 5%, they give it to you, and you could deliver 15, 20, 30% profits. You don't need to beg the public, but it's an interest-free loan, right? These pre-orders, like I told you, these investments, they always turn out to be that. So let's do a summary here. Okay, let's be brutal, but fair, right? Nobody's trying to lie to you. Everything's on there. The onus is unto you for you to go in there and read all this stuff. If you don't want to read, well, if you don't like reading, you can watch videos like this, right? Right. Regulation A, right, let's tie it up here. Regulation A does not mean this is low risk. Not at all. It makes it legally disclosed that you have a lot of risk. That's really what it does. Escrow does not mean automatically that you're going to get refunds. No, it doesn't. It only protects you if the paperwork forces them to. Investors still can lose 100% of their money, right? That is clearly stated on the filing, right? If you haven't read this, go ahead and read it again. That's the whole purpose of Regulation A. You're not buying Atari stock. You are not guaranteed a hotel, and you are not guaranteed profit. You are funding a speculative real estate project that uses the Atari brand. That's what you're doing, right? And that's just something that we talked to you about before. I've stated that many times. And again, this doesn't mean anybody's lying. It means that fans should stop. You as a fan, Atari fan, because you could already see it. I'm excited about this project. I'm going to go and I'm going to do it. Stop assuming protections that don't exist. Okay? And if you're out there claiming that this is, this and that and the other, and you're a YouTuber and you want to show for this, that's fine. I'll make videos on you and tell you why you're wrong. Right? If you're investing, read the paperwork, not the marketing. And that's true for any investment. Forget the marketing. Right? Marketing can be anything. We're going to build pavilions. We're going to have concerts. We're going to do this. You don't have brick one. You're not going to do anything. You need to have a building. Tell me what you're going to do after you have it. Right? It's not like a venture where you have a big property and you start off with something small. You see this in casinos all the time. Casino has a huge property, but they build something small and it just keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. As they're more successful, they fund themselves, right? If you have a great idea, you don't need outside money. Why are you going to share your profit? Unless what you're bringing in is actual profit. That makes a lot of sense. All right, guys. I just wanted to nerd out here and talk about this stuff. Give you the flyer. Again, this is not financial advice of any kind. It's kind of an education so you guys can start thinking about these investments a different way. I hate to see people lose money on these things because they don't know, really what they're doing or what they're talking about. Sometimes thinking, oh, I'm going to invest $500, I'm going to get 10x returns, or whatever it is. But whether it's this or anything else, don't get fooled by these words. Don't fool yourself. Right? Nobody's trying to fool you. They say them. It's up to you to interpret this right, the way it should be interpreted in this context of this type of investment. You're not investing in Atari. You're not buying Atari stock. All you're doing is you're funding a real estate project, sort of, maybe, hopefully. Your financial advisor will tell you what to do. All right, humans, thank you so much for joining me. Make sure that if you like this kind of content, you can go check out the pre-show. If you're a member, you can sign up. Or if you want to pick a topic, you go down to Kofi. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.